not.
First and foremost, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Good? Good. You guys stoked to be out our semi-quasi field problem? A little bit better than FTX4 last year because you get a couple more days, or at least a day more. So good times. All right, so what does the term, when I say AR-15, what does AR stand for?
Armaloid.
Oh, shut up, Carl. Way to ruin it right away. What do other people call it?
Assault rifle 15.
The assault rifle is a made-up term and does not exist. This is an Armalite rifle series 15. This is actually an M4. So in 1959, Eugene Stoner was sitting in his garage or wherever he was sitting one day and thought he had a good idea for a rifle because traditional rifles were much different. They didn't function up to the functionality. He wanted to be able to shoot more rounds at a more rapid rate. And the way to do that is through something called gas impingement. So, as you have already seen, you've taken apart the gun, you've seen the different parts that go inside of it. So right here, at the end of this block, is a little bitty hole. So gases from the front of the bullet and gases from the rear of the bullet get pushed through that hole, which is then pushed through a gas tube, which you can actually see right there, which push back on your bolt, on your gas key on your bolt, and push your bolt to the rear. That bolt moving to the rear then cocks your gun, does all the good stuff it's supposed to do, and it's ready to shoot again. We had several other variants of guns that would do the same thing, but for some reason this one, they actually got dubbed the plastic gun when the M16 first came out. A lot of people thought it was felt like a toy rather than a real gun. And believe it or not, it was actually sold as like you didn't have to do maintenance to the gun. So it was like it would fire under all conditions and all kinds of other stuff. And so people didn't do any maintenance, and obviously the guns failed massively. So for the first 2 years of production, people were like, these things suck. And then they found out, oh, we just have to put oil in it. If you put oil in it, the gun will work forever. And it will. It'll work forever. It'll work for a long time. But he did not know what he was stumbling upon, not only for just the design of a gun, because, I mean, think about it. How long this thing's been around since '59. And very little changes happen. Other platforms have come out which are similar, but they all still use either the gas piston or gas impingement. The difference between a gas piston is a gas piston will actually blow, the round will come up, or the air will come across, and it hits a piston rather than the actual bolt itself, and the piston drives the bolt backwards. There's some argument which one is more accurate. In theory, the gas impingement would be more accurate because there's less inertia moving with the gun, whereas the gas piston has a lot more inertia. But I mean, a skilled shooter can probably shoot either one. I have both, and I've seen no big difference between either one of them. But yeah, in theory, your secondary follow-up shot would probably be a fraction of a second slower with a gas piston rifle. But as he made this thing, there was no big. I didn't realize what this was going to become. Not only for performance as a weapon, but as also just controversy in our society. This is a big controversial thing in our society because it's viewed as a big scary gun, when in reality it's a souped up 22. That's pretty much all it is. It is one of the best designs in the world because it works under most conditions. Again, and if you feed this thing with oil and keep it lubricated, it will shoot a lot. It does require a little bit more maintenance. You've got to punch the bore out, clean the bolt a little bit, but I can shoot probably around 14,000 rounds with this thing without cleaning it before I start noticing massive amounts of damage. So like I said, I think it's one of the most beautiful things we've ever created. I think that and the 1911 are probably some of the most iconic weapons we've ever seen, and it works well. I've shot many people with it. We have a fond relationship. Anyways, on to the test. So everybody got to see and disassemble. I better come on. Pull up. Sure thing. I have no fingernails, so I chew them all off. Nervous on it. Muchas gracias, senor. All right. The most complicated thing, and the thing you need to learn most about this gun, is the trigger. If you can master the trigger, you can master the gun. Position, all that stuff will come easy. It's not very hard. So as you notice, the trigger is setting like it is right now. This is in its safe configuration. So when I put it to fire, if everybody notices, if you look down in there, you can see some springs, right? On the left and right hand sides. People can kind of see it. Okay, when I start to pull the trigger, those springs are going to tighten on each side, right? So this is a trigger bar. my trigger is here. My finger would go in this way or that way, whichever way you're gonna pull. So as I pull the trigger, the springs are gonna tighten, and the sear, because it's sitting like this against my hammer, the sear is gonna move down on the hammer. So what you gotta do when you're pulling the trigger is you'll see a slight bit of movement that'll happen beforehand. So I'm gonna apply pressure. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm applying pressure. See that slight bit of movement? There we go. A little bit more, slight bit of movement.
Goes down
And any more, and I'll let the trigger go. That slight bit of movement is you taking all the tension out of the springs and moving the sear as far down as you possibly can before it goes. What people tend to do is they tend to go, I'm going to shoot. 1, 2, 3, and they push like that, right? When you do that, you do something called rapid acceleration, which means that you're pushing through all that all that space, and it's going to open your group up. All right? That's the difference between being able to shoot somebody in the rank and shoot somebody in the chest. So it's not a huge deal, but it could affect some accuracy, especially at 300 to 600 meters or anywhere like that. So the very first thing I teach people is, when you're pulling the trigger, you're going to pull it with smooth, steady. I call it like building up a locomotive. Like I'm going to start a locomotive engine, and I'm going to start building pressure, and I see it, I can feel it, I can feel it, there it goes. The big key to remember is to feel that movement. All right. So today when we're dry firing, I don't care about your aim, I don't care about anything else. All I want you to feel is that slight movement beforehand and know, okay, it's going to go. I knew that was going to happen. If you can do that, I promise you, this is 20 years of experience. You can do anything with this gun. It's not that hard. That is it. That's the key. Now, there's other little things you need that need to happen to help you out and be successful. Another one of which is, so if I shoot the gun, I'm going to pull the trigger. All right, ready? I'm going to apply pressure. I feel it. There's that movement. There's that slight movement. It's going to go. There it goes. All right. Now, notice how I'm holding the trigger back, and it's going to go through its recoil, or its battery, or 8 cycles of function. It's going to settle back down on the target, and then watch the hammer. Like magic. Not really. It's mostly mechanical engineering. So what did I do? It shot, the hammer stayed there, and then as I let off the trigger, the hammer went up, right? That's the 2 stages of a 2-stage trigger. The first stage is it is held down to keep out of the way of your bolt. And when you let off, it goes to, so it's connected to, so it connects to this sear right here. Everybody see that little piece? So it connects to that sear first when I'm doing this. And then once I let off that sear, it lets go and connects it to the sear further down here on the hammer. Why it does that? I have no fucking clue. I don't know who invented that. I don't know why they do that. I know the original design, I'm assuming, is to keep the hammer off the bolt, as one would assume. And it also acts as a safety mechanism, so you have a little bit more of a safe trigger. But for me, even though I own a few really expensive triggers, I'm a lot more accurate with a mil-spec trigger. Mil-spec meaning this is a military specification trigger. So I'm a lot more accurate with this. The only reason why is just because I pulled a mil-spec trigger so many times. I actually prefer it because it makes me think about, okay, am I feeling the trigger move? Am I feeling it move? That's it. I'm feeling it move. It's going to go any second. There we go. So I can kind of feel that there. So again, I tell you that to tell you that focus on the trigger more than you focus on anything else. All right. Am I missing anything I ever been there on the trigger? No, sorry. All right. So, grip on the piston, right here on the forward grip. So if I shoot like this, how accurate do you think I'll be?
Not so accurate, sir.
Why?
Because you have no control.
What have I created here?
A larger radius for that bullet.
I've also created a nice fulcrum point for the barrel to move, right? So now when I'm trying to transition and move things around, that barrel's going to move. So if I reach my hand out and actually just grab a little bit more, that fulcrum point becomes way less, right? So with my non-firing hand, I'm usually going to use that as pretty much my big grip hand. That's going to grip it and push it back into my body. All right, so there are 2 things that are going to happen with the gun no matter what. The very first 2 things that you cannot help, you cannot do anything about, is the gun is going to go like this and then like this, right? Because it's going to shoot a projectile out, and then air is going to fill that vacuum and void up, slap your bolt, and make it go upwards. So your entire body position is designed to fight against that. So the very first thing you want to do is have good backing of the gun. Since all the inertia is coming through the buffer tube and spring and all that good stuff, I probably want to have the majority of my weight right here. I have a cool little 11.5-inch LWRC, which has a, it's not a buttstock, it's got a brace on it. Have you seen it?
Yeah, ATF says it's a no-go now.
That's
Might wanna
horseshit.
check that.
That's horseshit. It's the first time I've been federally legal in my entire life. So I bought this brace, but it doesn't have a lot of stuff down here. So I don't, it's not very stable down here. When I lay in the prone, most of the majority of the time, my rifle is sitting right here, almost towards my collarbone. And when I stand up, if I'm not wearing kit, I shoot just like this. Well, with the peep side up, because that helps way more. I shoot just like this. If I have kit on, it's going to go a little bit more to the outside, and I have to bring my face in like this. Big thing you'll notice is, when I bring my face over, I didn't do this, right? Everybody saw what I did? So I grabbed the gun. Oops, someone texted me. So I grabbed the gun, and I slid my face straight down. That's exactly how I looked down. Notice how I got a nice chipmunk cheek? It's another point of performance. So, big grip here, nice high grip here. I'm going to tell you this again, nice high grip here, what we call a dovetail. That allows me to pull my trigger straight to the rear. If I don't have a nice high grip and I have a low grip, what am I doing?
Pulling the trigger down.
Yes, at an angle, right? Okay, so another cool thing. Because your brains know what it feels like to pull your finger straight to the rear, subconsciously, if your hand is low, it's going to give you, let me start this with a question first. In common shooting, when you see a string of fire that's up and down on a target, what does that usually indicate?
That's trigger sweep.
Well, you know now. I taught you already. Most of the times people will equate that to what?
No, breathing.
That could be true. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm telling you 90% of the time, that's not what it is. 90% of the time, it's a low grip, just like this. Because people, instinctually, when they know that's not a feeling straight to the rear, you subconsciously will move the gun up or down to get the proper feeling. I know it seems crazy, but it happens. It happens all the time. Now, if you've ruled that out, and someone's shooting as a coach, if you've seen that and been like, okay, no, their pistol grip's nice and high, it shouldn't be doing that, then reevaluate the breathing. But breathing, for the most part, is an auto-index function. So who here has sewn something on their uniform? Or on a pair of clothing? Who here's, you say you've sewn something, who you've sewn something? Nobody else has sewn anything their whole lives? Jesus, you guys go sew something. Learn a trade or something. Have you tightened a tiny screw like on your sunglasses or something like that? Okay. So before you did that, did you go, like before you threaded the needle or got your screwdriver ready, did you go, did you? No, because it's fucking natural. It happens, all right? It's one of those things you do on your own without having to tell yourself. But I tell you, don't rule it out, because especially with novice shooters, you will sometimes see a slight pause or inward-outward breath on their trigger pull. So keep an eye out. It is important, but it's not the most important thing in the world. It's definitely not. It's one of the last things I usually rule out. Usually 9 times out of 10, the problem is right here. All right. So again, backing of the gun, holding the gun. The idea is to keep the recoil and the barrel rise down, and to be able to hold the gun so that way I can maneuver the trigger. I can maneuver the trigger without moving it. So, this instance here, if I do this and take my finger straight off right away, why do you think that might be bad? Or good? So if I just go, so if I pull the trigger and instantly go and take my finger off, what do you think's happening? All right, so I'll challenge you. Think about this. If I'm going to turn right and walk to bender, I'm going to tell my major muscle groups to do something, right? I'm going to turn right, walk to bender. What happens a fraction of a second before I move?
Joints get lubricated.
Boom, joints get lubricated. What else? Fast twitch muscles start to move, tendons start to tighten. So something is happening a fraction of a second before I do it. It's not something huge. I mean, it's no big deal. So if I tell myself as I shoot when I pull my trigger, bang, and I let off immediately, a fraction of a second before I let off, my joints are lubricating, my tendons are tightening, my fast twitch muscles in my hand are going to move. So I'm doing something called, I'm imparting tremble on the gun. That means there's enough vibration and movement in your hand to physically move the gun. It may be very minimal. It may not move you all the way off target, but that's enough to keep you from shooting somebody in the rank and putting it just somewhere randomly in their chest. Make sense? All right, if at any point in time I'm speaking over your head, just raise your hand so I can kind of get you back in the zone. None of this is very hard. Shooting is actually one of the easiest things in the world. So, anyways, big thing I look at first is I look to make sure that somebody is shooting and they have good follow through. So that's what this is called, in the shot process. So they're putting the finger in, they've decided, what's our 4 rules of firearm safety?
We just said it earlier. Oh, you want me to say it?
Yeah, they can say it too. If you told them already.
I told you guys. Repeat it.
Point the gun in a safe direction.
Treat every weapon.
First rule, treat every weapon like it's loaded.
Point in a safe direction.
Third,
Keep your finger off the trigger.
and
Unsafe.
Know
weapon on safe.
Know your target and what's behind it.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is the 4 rules of firearm safety, but it is also a good engagement criteria. Does that make sense? So if those gates meet all of that thing, I can shoot at it.
Mm-hmm.
That means I'm fair to shoot, right? If I know I'm going to shoot Carl, technically I can point my gun at him, right? And I can put my finger on the trigger and take the weapon off safe. The safety and the trigger finger go hand in hand, okay? And then if I know that I'm not going to shoot Lee behind him, so I'll just stand a little like this, and then I shoot him. We're good to go, man. That's my engagement criteria. That made it fair to put my finger on the trigger. That's all you're looking for. Remember that constantly and throughout your life. So I do my best, especially when I'm teaching at my other place. I work hard to make sure people have a very good muzzle awareness. And usually you'll see me, if you ever see me standing around, you'll usually see me standing just like this, because that means that I know exactly where the muzzle is, and it's usually between my feet. So, all right. So, hand high in pistol grip. I choose, if I'm going to take a real accurate shot, I bury my finger all the way in there, just because these triggers are so hard. You can do, each of us are going to be different. Elsie's hands are probably smaller than mine, so her hand might be in a different spot. She may not be able to put her finger all the way in. She may only be able to use the first digit. What I caution you is, especially on a military gun, is just, if you're doing it a little like that and your finger's not all the way in, watch your trigger finger. So as you start to pull, if you've got a lot of wave or movement in your trigger finger, just put a little bit more in, that'll help out. If you're shooting really hard to the right each time, and then you do like a CQM base of fire and you shoot real close and it's moved from right to left, you might be putting just a little too much in. But you'll be able to dial those things in. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be that. It's just going to be purely your trigger pull. Better, you want to hop in the prone?
Sure thing. You want me on the stage, or?
Yeah.
I think we're just doing that in the later groups. Okay, so what are the steps to getting in the prone? Point, post with my non-dominant hand on the ground, sprawl backwards.